We may be live. I'm still waiting to get to see a screen where I can see my beloveds.
I know, I just see a picture of us. Are we
Yeah.
live? Can you guys hear us?
We are live, but let's wait just a second and we'll let as many people in as possible before we start.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Ellie, we see your screen. That's why we're asking. Yes, I see your comments. You can hear us. Nobody,
Okay, you can hear us.
nobody say
Yes,
something
perfect.
weird. Hello,
All right, Ellie, let's go live.
Are we supposed to say something scandalous because we don't know we're the live? Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, I think we are live now.
Hot mic, hot mic.
Hot mic. We are live. And I'm going to go ahead and start. Hello, everyone. I see some of you are still coming in. I'm Kim Bissell. I'm one of the co-owners of Broadway Books, and we're here in Portland, Oregon. Sally McPherson and I and our whole Broadway Books team, thank you so much for joining us tonight as we celebrate Lidia Yuknavitch and the paperback launch of her brilliant short story collection, Verge. We are thrilled, beyond thrilled, to be joined by one of our favorite humans, Lidia, but also by two of her dear friends and two women we think of as dear friends as well, Pam Houston and Cheryl Strayed. Let's start with a few tech and housekeeping items. If you have questions tonight for Lidia or Cheryl and Pam, go ahead and answer those questions. Enter those questions to the panelists in the chat, and they'll do their best to answer as many as possible. We have a large and enthusiastic audience tonight, and we apologize if we're unable to get to everyone's questions. This event is free, and the very best way to support these amazing women and future events from our little independent bookstore is to buy their books. So we'll be posting links in the chat to purchase any and all of their published works, both from our website and as audiobooks from Libro.fm. After this event, you can always find them on our website, www.broadwaybooks.net. For more information about upcoming virtually live events through Broadway Books, join our mailing list from our website, and we'll share event information as well as reading suggestions. Okay, so let's just admit, this is going to be a love fest of the greatest kind as we all gush all over these three tonight. So in thinking about how to best introduce these wise women, and in my mind, my gift-granting three fairy godmothers, or really god sisters, as we're all about the same age, I thought I'd do something completely different and share something special about how all three of these women helped me to become who I am. I know they hear these stories all the time, and my stories will resonate with many of you, but tonight they're going to hear it personally from me. Pam Houston is the first. Her book, Cowboys Are My Weakness, first printed in 1992, literally changed my life. I had been dating to satisfy a craving for happiness and fulfillment in my life, and my first fairy god sister, Ms. Houston, taught me instead to fulfill and satisfy my own happiness. Brilliant and simple and life-changing. Thank you. The second fairy god sister is the brilliant Cheryl Strayed, who lost her mom at almost the same age and same time as I. Her epic journey through grief, written about in Wild, was my epic journey through grief, and she taught me to own that pain, to live with it, to sit with it, and to become better because of it. Once again, brilliant and simple and life-changing. Thank you. And now for the ultimate fairy god sister, the amazing Lidia Yuknavitch, who we are here to celebrate tonight for her highly touted and incredibly colorful short story collection, Verge. It was your beautiful memoir, Lidia, The Chronology of Water. Sweet god sister, you taught me to own my own sexuality and the importance of our bodies as an expression of self. Again, brilliant and simple and life-changing. So a huge thank you to all of you who are joining tonight, and especially a heartfelt thank you to my three fairy god sisters for showing up for each other and for us every day. So everyone, please join me in virtually welcoming Lidia Yuknavitch in conversation with Pam Houston and Cheryl Strayed.
Thank you so much, Kim. We love you. And Broadway Books is a little piece of all of our hearts. And we love everyone who is here too. If only Amy were here to catch you, Pam, we could recreate the circumstances of the running leap. But we're thrilled to be here with you in any way, shape, or form. If I try to speak to my love for Cheryl and Pam, it will get ugly cry really quickly. So instead, I'm going to read a very short thingy as our lead-in, and then we can all talk to each other and laugh and cry and have a sip of wine if you would like to. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Here is that colorful cover with the wolf, Rainbow Wolf book that Kim was talking about. Of my reasons to love that this book exists is this cover. I almost dressed in these colors, but I put them on and I look like shit in these colors. So I had to not do that. I wore my traditional black. Yes, Kimberly Dark, I'm wearing the hoodie. So this is a story about a woman on the verge, like pretty much every character in the book. But there are a series of women on the verge of something. And it's in the voice of a dude. However, the story is not about the dude. And it's more of an angle on women from culture that asks us why we're so angry and loud and hysterical. Wouldn't we prefer to just be taken care of? So the dude in the story, just don't even worry about him. It's called A Woman Refusing. Guy busts into the diner I'm in and blares out, "There's a woman on top of the Wells Fargo Tower. Somebody go get some help, quick." And I'm scraping the inside of my coffee cup with a spoon, and the circle's great, and the people in the booths cringe and look at me, and I take my time turning around. "She doesn't need any help," I say. "But she's naked," he says, flapping and squawking, "and she's 40 stories up, for Christ's sake. What if she jumps off this building?" I continue my unbearable stirring. People have turned their attention to us, a little drama for lunch. I stop stirring to say, "That ain't why she's up there." And then I start again. I don't even look at him. I can hear his agitation as he lurches over toward me in my face, and he says, "How the hell do you know?" He's exasperated. Try being married to her for a few years, I think. Try living that life for one fucking day. I finally turn and look at him. "I know because I've been up there," I tell him. "Not just this time, hundreds of times. And buddy, I can tell you, I ain't going up there anymore. In Cleveland, it was the pump station. In Boston, the tower in Harvard Square. In Lubbock, Texas, the Buddy Holly statue, which is only like 6 to 10 feet off the ground, mind you. No, sir, this is it. I'm not going after her anymore." And I drink the whole cup down in one gesture, like letting all the years settle into one fine, lukewarm, caffeinated beverage. He's not satisfied. "Look, mister," he says, "I don't care if she is your wife, ex-wife," I correct him. "Whatever, ex-wife, she's in trouble and somebody needs help. We can't just stand here. We can't just let this happen. We have to do something." And I snort out a laugh. "What I'm trying to tell you is this. I was just up there half an hour ago, talking her down on a goddamn walkie-talkie the entire way up with a bunch of people I don't know trailing me. You know, strangers are full to the brim with advice until an actual fucking crisis hits, and then they stand there with their goddamn mouths open like bloated, paralyzed fish. I get up there again for the I don't know how manyth time, and she's naked, yet again, and cool as a fucking cucumber. The first thing she says to me is, "What the hell are you doing here? Couldn't they find somebody more suitable? Christ." Just for the sake of argument, I say, since we've been through this before, I go, "What do you mean by suitable? You want a guy in a suit?" Ha! She doesn't laugh. "Someone more dramatic," she says. "Less, I don't know, ordinary." I look down at the tar on the roof up there, old baseballs, wadded up paper, wire, weird stuff up there on the roof. And I say, "Dorothy, I think they assume we have a common history. And she looks off and says, well, they should have considered the ramifications of that history. I say, geez, are things really that bad that you have to keep pulling stuff like this for the rest of your life? Wasn't it enough for us to go and break up? And when I say that bad, I make the mistake of waving my arms around, and she responds by waving her arms wildly and saying, as a matter of fact, things have never been better. And she throws one leg over the edge of the building in some kind of weird fit. That was the whole marriage, one leg over the edge. I bet from the ground you saw a helpless naked woman lurching and retracting. I then make mistake number 2. I say, well, damn, you look great. And she says, you motherfucker. And she starts cursing so hard that spit flies out of her mouth and her hair rages around like crazy from a wind whipping up briefly. She says, you're the most predictable human on the planet. You're like Tupperware. And then she makes obscene flailings with her other leg until she's sitting on the edge. And my heart, it's jackknifing in my lungs, which is an old feeling with this broad. I move toward her out of instinct, take a moment of comfort in that. Anyone in their right mind would move toward a naked woman on a rooftop if she got too close to the edge, right? She darts a "you're dead" look at me and says, listen, don't be a pathetic ass. You couldn't get me to be a wife. You can't get me down from here. You can't even make me put my clothes back on. You try to grab me and I'll just divorce you in a more permanent way. You get what I'm saying? And all I can do is stand there staring at nothing. I'm so familiar with this feeling between a man and a woman that I can barely recognize it. Me like a jerk with my hands dangling from the ends of my know-nothing arms, me looking at the ground no matter where I am in my life, no matter what successes or failures or confidence or panic I may be feeling. We freeze there like that for a long minute until she finally calms down and breathes a bit and says, you know what's extraordinary? What? I say. You can see flight from above. Yet another completely incomprehensible statement from what always appeared to be a normal, beautiful, intelligent woman. I respond, who knows why? Maybe it's inevitable. What are you talking about? I'm tired. I don't want to listen to her nonsense anymore. I'm more tired than I've been in my entire life. We're not even together anymore and won't be. I could remarry. I could have 1,000 different lives in 1,000 different worlds, and we'd still meet here like this, in this way. Birds, she says. From up here, you can see them from the top and not the belly side. She means she can see their backs, the tops of their wings. And she holds her hands and arms out like a bird. And for an instant, I think, my God, she is as beautiful as ever. She's so angry and interesting that she's larger than life. I think, this is it. This is really it, though. She's changed. She's different somehow. If the wind blows, she'll lose her balance. And I screech, Dorothy, don't, for Christ's sake, don't. And she turns and looks at me quietly. And she says, don't be an ass. I'm not a bird. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to drink this coffee. And when I'm done, I'm going to walk out of here and I'm never going to see her again. I'm still a young man. I've got a life, pal. You want to save her? Knock yourself out. Thank you. So now to help move me away from that, and I will take a sip of the wine and Cheryl and Pam will help us proceed down some path of some sort.
Pam is good at leading us down wild paths. And Lydia, I just want to say, first of all, congratulations. And on this book, a year ago, congratulated you on this book at another reading at another bookstore in Portland, and we hugged each other. And I was just thinking, I think that's the last time I saw you. And it's one of the last times I touched anyone else,
That's right. Yep.
So congratulations on the paperback publication. I love that story. It's one of my favorite stories in the book.
Thank you. And that was the last week I touched anyone either except my immediate family. And then darkness descended.
It's madness. So are we supposed to interview you, Pam? Are we supposed to interview Lidia now?
Yeah, I can do it. I know where to go. So just a few things about that, which is, no one could have ever imagined we were going to have to do this whole thing without our girlfriends. Like that was, it was like they concocted the worst possible punishment for women, that we had to move through life without our girlfriends. And so I miss you guys so much, and I'm so happy to see you. And I just want to say thanks to Sally for getting us all together, and Kim for getting us all together. So yeah, I have a question. And it's about the way Verge says exactly what it means. Like, one of the things that I really noticed about Verge is how upfront it is with its meaning and its message. It isn't polite, and sometimes it chooses a kind of blatant announcement of its politics rather than a kind of subtle bury the politics in metaphor. And I admire it for that. And I've been thinking about Amanda Gorman a lot. I've been thinking about Amanda Gorman, and I've been thinking about the few people on my Facebook page who so outed themselves as being anti-Amanda Gorman because it wasn't, all that. We don't even have to, we can just nod our heads at each other about all that. But I guess I just want you to talk about your decision to be that way in this book, to be more out, even more out with your defense of, the people who live in the margins in one way or another, spiritually, psychologically, financially. And also just, I want you to talk about why we have to just say what we mean these days instead of being artsy fartsy about it.
Well, there are some artsy fartsy flourishes in there, so I'll cop to
Certainly
that.
are.
But I know what you're talking about. And it strikes me that the Amanda Gorman critiques miss the entire point of her presence and art and power and beauty. And they were really irrelevant, to be honest. But to get into your question with the characters and these stories, there's a point at which you can either, as a writer, follow the tropes and traditions and sort of high loft of the literary standards, or you can tell the truth. And if the truth isn't already a part of that rarefied world, it will sound different. It will sound literal or trashy or, like, how dare you? Or who do you think you are? Or, well, that's not a real poem. That's not poetics. And these actual people living actual lives, discovering the poetics of being and the art of the heart and soul and guts, speak a different language. And that language is coded a little more. If it's spoken to you or you read a story about it, it might make you shake, or it might make your heart race, or it might make you sweat or vibrate. And for me, that's the language I would like to present upon pages, not to get rid of the high literary art or artsy fartsy, Pam, not to get rid of it or even attack it, but just to say beauty lives here too. And beauty has more than one language, and beauty isn't always of the industry or the high art tropes that we give reverence to, you can give reverence to the good dirt too. And I'm sitting with two women who do that all the time in their work. So that's how I would answer that question. But I'm allowed to ask it back at you. I know you both know what I mean about the good dirt and the language of an actual body and soul and guts and heart. And couldn't some of us work on that? Don't you think you both do that too?
Well, yeah, I find myself more and more. It feels like we are far enough into the lateness of the world, to borrow a Carolyn Forche title, that it's just too freaking late to be, one of the things about Amanda Gorman, when I saw the people who were critical of her, I thought, the only thing I thought, and I thought it again and again, is you don't understand who's making the world right now. You don't understand who's making the world. And if you think you're still making the world, you've got a whole nother thing coming to you. And so for me, I'm sort of negotiating that all the time in my own work, like just the balance, I would say, of how much I love subtlety and how much I love asking the reader to work hard to feel their way into my metaphors or into my structures.
Yeah.
But then also just saying, like, it's too late to fuck around. Like, we got to just say what we mean, because if we don't say what we mean, like, we are the elders now, like it or not. And if we don't say what we mean, we're not doing the job that it is our time to do. And so it's those two things, trying to attend to those two things at one time. And the book is beautiful and it's full of art. But it's also, it's loud, in my opinion, and how it calls out the mean people.
Well, and I think it very specifically as well, to me, what was very striking is, so how many stories in the book are like this one? The title is A Woman, what the women wants, what's the title of the story you just read?
The one now you made me forget. Curse you.
Women, annoyed? What?
No, it's not annoyed. It's a woman refusing.
A woman refusing. Okay.
But yeah, there's a bunch of them. Like
there's a bunch of them that are a woman
floating, right? A woman refusing, a woman apologizing, a woman going out, those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's just so unabashedly feminist and unabashedly political, and not, in a way that I think all three of us came up in a kind of literary generation, that the thing that we were always taught is, well, it's really hard to write, for your work to be political if you're writing in a very direct way about a viewpoint, or expressing a political stance. And that's true. There are, that can be done really ham-fistedly. But you, Lidia, you have this kind of force of, the force of your ability to be, to quote Pam, artsy fartsy, to use the language in literary ways that are also incredibly direct, incredibly bold, and incredibly just like saying, I'm not going to pretend that patriarchy isn't a thing. I'm not going to be polite and act like that there are two sides to the story. I'm going to act as if there is one and it is mine. And I think that was really exciting to me about this book.
Yeah, I think my age may have something to do with the place I'm at in my writing too. I don't know if the two of you would agree with where you're at as your age. Maybe age has nothing to do with it, but for me, nobody knows how much time they have left. And I don't want to legitimize and participate in the literary forms that I inherited anymore, because they're part of the problem. And so, to be shut, that's Sadie. Say hello to Sadie. to be shy about it now would be disingenuous. You know, I'm not shy about it. The first story in the book has something washing up on the shore that we're responsible for as a people, as human beings. And so I would like to tell some stories that give high literary truth and beauty in pain and joy to elements we try to put in the periphery because they're considered brutal or ugly or difficult or misfitted or something. And I'm still struggling to find the language for that, given what the question was. Like, I don't think I found it yet, Pam. I'm looking for it, and I intend to keep looking for it. And like wrestling language away from what we've inherited to see what else it could be. And the strongest writers in the world right now are successfully wrestling language back to their bodies and material conditions. Like Amanda.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have a question, Cheryl?
I
Or
do. So Lydia, one of the most interesting things to me always is basically, I love birth stories of all kinds, actual birth stories of people giving birth to human babies, but also I'm curious about the book Birth Story. How did you come to write this book? Where did it begin? Where did it take you? What was your, what was your idea? Tell us the story of Verge.
It's there were birth pains for sure. And the reason there were birth pains is that it's a curation. I would call it a curation of my past and my present and my future as a woman writer. And the stories dip into past ideas I've had and language I've had and present tense things going on in the world or in my face or around us or politics that I participate in. And then a future that we're barreling toward. And again, we don't quite have the language for yet, but we might want to think about inventing that language. And this book has all three of those tenses in it. And the more I thought about that, I thought, well, they're tenses to a life. They're tenses to a single life, and they're tenses to a sentence, and they're tenses to a people and a community, and they're tenses to what we decide we care about in any epoch. And so when I use the word curation, it means I moved around in my whole life, and then one ripple out to the community around me, and one ripple out to the nation, and one ripple out to the world. But I was sort of trying to amplify the same kind of question, like time tenses, and what can we learn around time tenses. And so then Verge spit out of the chute and it had blood and mucus and weird things on it, like any baby would. And they made it really beautiful cover with a wolf on it, which strikes me as so appropriate for the kinds of stories that are in it. They are beautiful and they are brutal, and that toggles like it has in my life.
I remember, you and I, Lydia and I, those of you out there in the world, we have a spot in Portland that I won't say where it is.
Don't tell them.
I won't. We have a spot. We always just say, like, let's meet in our spot, and we have a spot and we go on long walks and talk. And it's just been a long-standing tradition now for several years. And I remember us walking, and you were talking about maybe doing the last round on this book or the edits of this book. And you were like, I just can't, I don't think I can do it.
I remember, yeah.
You're like, I don't think I can do it, and it's too hard, or it's whatever, and I know a lot of people out there like love to hear the stories of like the actual writing. And I just want to say that, you know, I know I relate to that deeply when a writer says I can't do it, because like that's how I feel all the time. So I just wondered if you would also speak to that, like, you know, what was the, you know, what were you grappling with when you said that to me? I don't remember, but like maybe talk a little bit about that. I think people are interested in that, because writing is hard, it turns out. Did you know?
God, yes, I felt complete torque. I always feel complete torque, and you can hear it from us. We go through deep pits of despair and pain and I suck-ism, and you know, nobody on the planet's going to want to read any of this. And I do believe that one day I also proposed to your dog.
That's
Our
true.
dog Janie. Yeah, I asked Janie to marry me because I was like, I release myself from this world. I need to just go live with animals. I can't do this book. And I proposed to Janie.
But you have competition, because the last time Pam stayed at my house, which was I think about a year ago, she and Janie had a pretty romance.
Yeah, well, this surprises me not at all. Also, don't tell Sadie. But it was so hard. So every book or every project or every piece of art, the excruciating part is moving from private to public, and actually admitting that that's going to happen. And admitting that once it releases from you, you have no control over it anymore. It's kind of like children out into the world, or ideas leaving you and being put into motion. Anything you let go of that's a making will have a separation pain crucible you have to move through. And this book in particular had some of my past in it. And you know, you want to go through life as if you get more mature and better at things, and you don't make the same mistakes, and you're not fucked up anymore, and your stories will reveal that. Every book you write will be magically more evolved and more beautiful than the last book. And this book, I was giving, you know, the green light for it to carry a non-evolution. I was green lighting a curation that would include past fragments of writing, past pieces of my life, past philosophies and thoughts, and I was letting that be okay. And when I was with you, I was crying about but what's true is every piece of art you put in the world, there's no magical evolution. There's no way of knowing what people will respond to and what they won't. There's no way of knowing if the thing you put in the world has any meaning or relevance the time you put it there. And so you have to go back to process and ask yourself, why is this meaningful to do process-wise? Because once it's out of you, man, as you know, once it leaves your body, not yours.
I have a question. That was a beautiful answer. I even took a note. I wrote it down.
Send it to me so we know what we're doing.
Yeah, Pam, send me. I wanted to take a note too, but I don't have it pen here, so send it to me.
Says non-evolution, okay. That's what my note said.
You said something else that I wanted to write down. Now I forgot what it was. Maybe somebody else wrote it down.
It's a completely radical idea to me. Non-evolution, okay. I'm gonna like put it above my computer. But I have another question. And I was teaching this morning, and a writer who's in my class by the name of Katie Payne, she's a biologist, and she's written a lot of books about studying various animals in Africa. And anyway, she told a story in the piece that she turned in about standing up in the back of a truck, you know, coming down through the bush and getting like clobbered on the head by a tree. And she was bleeding, but it was really just a surface wound and she was okay. But all of the, you know, the African people she was working with were I think this was Kenya. I don't remember. I'm sorry. But all of the Kenyans, let's say, that she was working with were like moaning and moaning about her head injury. And even the next day they were still moaning. And she was like, no, really, it's okay, you know? But she thought about elephants and the way they grieve and the way they hold each other up. Anyway, all of that is to say the point of the piece, this beautiful piece that she let us read, was that like what if we were more like the elephants, or more like these Kenyans who, like, if one of us is hurt, they're all hurting and they're all moaning. And it seemed to me, as we were talking about it today, that COVID is such an opportunity for that. Like, COVID is such an opportunity for us to see how people's pain isn't real unless it's happening to us or our family members. And it feels like we're maybe in a moment where, like, other people's pain could start to matter to us more intensely than it has. And that seemed to me like maybe a path forward. And it seems very much like these stories in Verge are about that. I mean, it seems like your work is always about that, but these stories in Verge, these are people who are seeing each other's pain.
Right.
Like, even the one you read and you said, it's not about the dude, it's not about the dude, but it is about the dude.
A little bit.
About the moment that the dude says, she's so, what are the two words? I can't remember. Somebody put it in the chat. Someone, all of you out there, you all know what they are. Anyway, someone else will put it in the chat again for me. You know, she's so
angry and beautiful and interesting.
Angry and interesting, you know? And so he sees her pain, and that happens over and over again in the book. You know, people see each other's humanity in their pain. And so I'm not sure what my question is. I think writers have been trying to get people to see each other's pain for a long time. But I don't know, what do you think about this moment of COVID, or the moment of, you know, hopefully coming out of COVID, or like how can artists or writers seize this moment to say, you know, how can we, I mean, we're not gonna last even a millisecond if we don't start seeing each other's pain. That seems true to me. And I was thinking about that in terms of Verge and all the people in it who do. And I think, you know, the first story, which you mentioned, which is such a stunning, stunning story. If there's anyone in this room who has not read that first story in this collection, like, it's one of the greatest stories of all time. And it just is like the frickin' gut punch in the stomach in the last line that is all about what I'm talking about. You know, we put the children in the water.
And you should buy that book so you can read that story from Broadway Books.
But in any case, like, I just wonder if like, I spend so many hours a day thinking about how we're going to be different now, and the opportunities for difference, you know, even if doom is, you know, even if we're all doomed, like how are we going to go into the doom maybe differently, or how could we? And I just wonder what you think about that, for artists or for anyone.
I think several different things. I'll say two of them, and maybe more will occur to us. But the occasions in my life where I have experienced pain seem to me to be opportunities not to tell the story of my pain, but to find the portal to other people. And so whether it's memoir or fiction or some hybrid thing in between, I'm trying to pinpoint the moment where there's grief or trauma or pain and hold it open so that the beauty and the pain make a place you could move through, an interstice between different kinds of people. Where, and the word we've been using for a long time is empathy, right? Where empathy might emerge. But I think we even need to find some new language for whatever we've been calling empathy, because it hasn't been enough to say, oh, I can feel your pain. And so a lot of the stories in Verge don't resolve. They just pull an accordion apart to the difficulty and let you sit there with it. And if you walk away like, I don't want that, great, whatever. But you know, my goal was that you wouldn't walk away, that the accordion would pull open and you would touch it. You would touch otherness for a second, and not self. And in that touching of otherness, you would say, oh God, we're all part of a larger story. So that's one thing. And the second thing I would say has to do with trees. And I'm not looking at politicians right now to tell us anything meaningful. I'm not looking at media right now to tell us anything meaningful. There are some key individual humans I've been looking at and talking to and thinking about, and some art, and also trees in this way. The fact that their root systems talk to each other, the fact that their inner lines move in rippled out circles, and the fact that their branches do seasonal things that reach out toward the cosmos, that is the brilliance we might turn to change all the questions and ask different questions about how might we be in relationship to each other. And my last couple novels are about moving into the transhuman realm, not transgender, transhuman, to take ourselves off the pinnacle of existence and return to indigenous knowledges and return to things we think we've moved beyond, or again, evolved past, in terms of the cosmos and plants and animals and forms of being that aren't human, to find a different story for ourselves and how to be together and how to not, how to stop killing each other and the planet. So the one part of my answer is about what I try to do in my own practice and my own writing and my own life. And the other is about trees and rocks and water and mountains and how we don't have a choice anymore. If we don't change our relationship to the world we inhabit and take ourselves off the top, we're dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes me think of a story that Barry Lopez told about talking with a Pintupu elder in Alice Springs, and they were sitting, interestingly, in a strip mall courtyard when this magnificent conversation took place. But Barry was trying to explain to him the distinction we make between fiction and nonfiction, and the guy listened, and he was like, "Oh, that wouldn't work for us," and, which of course we all love. But then Barry said, "Well, what distinction would you make?" And the man said, "Well, we'd make a distinction between an authentic story and an inauthentic story." And
so with that,
he said, "What's the difference?" And the man said, "Well, an authentic story is about us. It's about all of us." And he sort of indicated the rocks and the trees and the people. And he said, and an inauthentic story is about the one who wrote it or who told it.
I'm down with that idea, and I'll be puzzling on it for probably the rest of my days.
It just seems like a story that takes into account your two answers to the last question simultaneously. Yeah.
And that can be, I mean, I think a point that people often miss when you hear something like that, they assume that that you're only talking about nonfiction. You know what I mean? Like a novel, a work of fiction can be as self-absorbed and only about the author as
oh God, yes.
It's like, it's really about that, how do we tell in whatever genre we decide to assign it to, how are we, it's always, how are we telling stories about us, about all of us?
Yeah, there's a person here named Jolie who used the word mycelium. Tree roots and mycelium and whale song seem to me a good place to go to look to figure out new storytelling forms, and in any genre, in any form. Rhizomic, root systems, words like that, strata, ring ripple. Let's make some new forms from what the world's always been trying to tell us, and not the people who built the tower.
So Lydia, should we take some questions from the audience? Are there questions? Do panelists have questions? Or what do you think?
I'm looking over there.
I know you guys, you don't have questions. You're just out. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. We can keep talking.
Yeah, there really haven't been any questions.
Yeah, okay.
You guys
Sorry, I
are
wasn't
cutie
paying attention to that.
patooties.
So Lydia, what obviously this book's been out a year, right? Yeah.
Yes, the year
Um,
of COVID.
uh, can you what have you been doing this past year? And I mean, what have you been writing? What have you been writing? What's going on in your literary professional life?
Well, like everybody else in my family unit, every single day and night has been a new odyssey where we experience 30,000 emotions, each of us and together. And so there's navigating that, like everybody. And the second place my energy has gone has been my micro communities around me to check on each other and see what's going on there. And then in my writing, it's just fundamentally shifted away from self. And, or another way to put that would be to say, I'm looking at ways to write, not without a self, but with a definition of self that doesn't depend upon ego and that doesn't depend on a unified individualism, but rather this more rhizomic and lateral. Well, if I want to tell a story, how do I include everyone I care about in it? Or how do I bring us to a moment where we realize we're touching each other, even if we don't want to be touching each other, which I've experienced in my life many times. And so it's sort of like a shift in position or subjectivity as a writer. But I make some of the same style moves. I make some of the same meh moves as Pam says. Another way to say what I do is that I do this sometimes. I'm still trying to get the reader to feel their body when they're reading and ask questions about their embodied experience. But the latest thing I'm working on is a new novel. And I am patiently waiting for the brilliant edits to come from my editor to help me make my way through the tangled and impossible mess I've made in this new novel. I mean, I can't write anything without making an impossible mess, or it bores me. Like, I can't just make a thing that makes sense. So I'm waiting for a flashlight. I'm waiting for a brilliant flashlight to help me finish off this new novel, which is on the topic of lots of things we're talking about.
We do have a lot of questions now. We just,
So let's ask some of them.
yeah. So I'm curious about this. Jude is asking Lydia, how did you organize the beads or stories into the necklace that is Verge? I'm always curious about story order, and especially in light of what you said about you're okay with non-evolution. I'd love to hear you talk more about that and how the stories found their places next to each other, basically.
I did have help from the publisher and editor, so I'll just say that off the top. But a couple of things that were super important to me. One was that those stories Cheryl was talking about, the fragments of the women on the verge of nervous breakdowns, basically, that those stories would punctuate, that they would, or thread through or come in and out, and that they would never resolve, and that they could be either a single woman or different women or just these women that come in and out with unresolved glimpses. That was super important to me. And then the other thing that was important to me was to somehow arrange or curate the idea that things that were hard that have happened in our pasts and things that are hard that are happening now sometimes could live next to each other, which is how The Pull ended up being the first story. And the stories that are close to it are curated from more like neighborhoods I lived in and shit that went down in a life or people I knew. I was interested in putting, the world difficulties next to the private space difficulties. So those two things are how a certain kind of order came out. And then, editors get in there and go, no. They move some of it around. It was also very important to me. The very last story in the book has to be last, or I would have walked. Not that that was a crisis of any sort, but it had to be the last thing.
And why is that?
It's where hope lives.
Mm-hmm.
A kind of hope untethered from the difficulties and messages culturally that inscribe us and make us feel trapped and doomed. It had to end there, and it kind of had to begin with the opening story.
Mm.
So non-evolution.
Yeah, more like
It's
biology.
not the same as the absence of hope.
No, biology and geography and geology. I mean, we watch evolution and its non-evolution counter every time there's a season. Mm-hmm. And what I mean is, of course, the geological and plant world evolve, yes, but they're also repetition. They also work in a circle. So when something dies, it's a new becoming, like a compost heap. Mm-hmm. So it's both cyclical and repetitive and wave-like and circular, and it's trees evolve, or plants evolve, animals evolve, but not in the way we've been told, where we're headed toward a pinnacle of progress. Evolution might mean regeneration and repetition and return, rather than climax and progress, and we're always getting smarter, better, bigger, whatever. And these stories just keep returning to each other, and this place where humanity has another chance to see each other and feel each other in the world. Yeah, exactly.
It's like the chronology of water.
Oh, you.
It is. Exactly.
We've had several questions, including one from Kim, who's in charge. So we're going to take that question, which is and several other people wanted to ask this too, what books have we all been reading that have particularly helped us in this time? And since I'm speaking right now, I can just say two right off the bat. The two books, I've read so many books because at Writing by Writers, which is my nonprofit, we have a Thursday night reading series where I interview a writer every Thursday night, and those are free and open to the public, just by the way. And many of our writers have chosen Broadway Books as their go-to bookstore at those readings. I'll just mention that. Mitchell Jackson, several people. But in any case, and so I've read so many books this year because I had to read a book a week. And I've never read a book a week, especially not contemporary books, like they're coming out right now and I'm reading them. I felt so well read for like the only time in my life in what was happening right now. But in any case, two books that really stood out this year, present company, of course, accepted, is Carolyn Forcher's What You Have Heard Is True, which might be the best memoir there's ever been. I'll just say that, it's a perfect memoir, in my opinion. And then I just read Nadia Owuso's Aftershocks, which is her first book, and it's stunning. I can't believe it's a first book or any book. It's so beautiful. So those are two books in my vast reading this year that stood out as really incredible whole made stories. Cheryl, you want to go?
Yeah. My mind, every time anyone asks me that question, my mind goes blank. So I just pulled up my phone to be because I started to keep a list for just this question, because I completely forget everything I've ever read. So one book, a memoir that I really enjoyed a lot, Wintering by Catherine May. Really, really interesting. I highly recommend it. I read Sue Miller's Monogamy novel that came out maybe a year or so ago. Really enjoyed that. And Cast. So I read books and I also listen to books. I listened to Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which is an amazing book that I think everyone should read. It took me hours and hours of walking while listening to that book, but it's deeply illuminating. And recently I read a really funny book that I have been hearing about for a while. It made me laugh so hard. It's called Dear Committee Members by Julie Schumacher. And that's also a great one to listen to. And it was one of those, I just needed a book that actually made me laugh out loud, and it did.
These are great books. I'm going to name somebody that Cheryl and Pam are familiar with and friends with and also love. But the question was like, right now during these weirdo times, although times have always been weird, but anyway, Ross Gay.
Oh yeah.
Both the Book of Delights and a new book, Holding. They make me see the world differently and remind me that we need to change the story always, every day, and shift the lens, even in your own body. And if you just even stand in a different position to your own difficulty and let the story shift, everything changes. And so that's a writer I would absolutely encourage everyone to run to. And I know you guys agree with me. But that was up for me recently. And also I've been watching a shit ton of movies and TV. Am I the only one? I'm sorry, I'm not just reading. And I got mesmerized most recently by Nomadland.
So I wrote a little review. I was asked they do this like writers on movies thing. It was for Variety magazine. And so I got to watch Nomadland like a month or so ago. And I have not stopped thinking about it. Like it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. And I know I think it just came out like a couple days ago, right?
Not that long ago, just days.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. You know how some stuff like you love it, but then you forget it the next day. I keep coming back to Nomadland. I think it's an extraordinary film.
But the other thing for everybody is you do this to get through it. You stay in touch and keep touching people who you know are part of your own heart and gut reality, and you keep helping your micro communities and any other communities you're able to, if you can. You share abundance and resources. You also share when there's difficulty and scarcity and figure it out together, which I've done with both of these women at many different times in our lives. And so how you keep going is keep telling each other your own stories and helping each other get your storytelling, to make bridges between people. That's the other way to survive it, to endure. That sounded so over dramatic. Sorry, I didn't mean it to.
It's beautiful. I'm so lucky that we got to see each other. So no, Pam, was it? Am I remembering right? Was it you were at my house a year ago, right?
Well, we think Sam and I got the same COVID, and we think we might have gotten it in Portland. Because remember, this is Samantha Dunn, another wonderful writer. If you haven't read By Accident, that book goes on your list. But Sam and I I was staying at your house, but remember, Sam was there and we were all together. And Sam and I both came down with COVID like 7 days later or 6 days later when we were together again in San Francisco.
You think it was COVID, or did you get a test?
Oh, it was COVID. We lost our sense of taste and smell. We couldn't walk upstairs for a month and a half. I mean,
okay. Wow.
It was COVID.
You didn't give it to me, thankfully.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we got it in Portland, or else maybe we got it in the San Francisco airport, but it was that trip, It's funny that we're all here together again, because that was the last time we were all
saw each other right before. I mean, you were my last house guest. You stayed in my
no doubt.
The world closed down.
No doubt. Yeah.
So I think
it could have been. We could have got.
I think it might be time to say goodbye. This is so sad, but wait. First of all, Pam, can you do us a favor and put in the chat the information about that writers group? There were some people that wanted to get some information about the writers group that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
It's
And I got to say,
writing. Sorry, I was just going to say, it's almost every Thursday night. All of the archives of these readings and interviews are at writingbywriters.org. And Ross Gay, Jericho Brown, Carolyn Forche, Terry Tempest Williams, many young writers, Nadia Owusu, who I mentioned, just went up there. Like, just check it out because the archives are really fun and it kept me alive.
Thank you, Pam. I have to say, those are some of the best book recommendations I've heard in a long time, and equally exciting, we have all of them at Broadway Books. And just so that you know, Ross Gay's Book of Delights is the Multnomah County Everybody Reads book. And so we are offering it at 20% off through April 8th. So if anybody wants to get a little Ross Gay in their life, the Book of Delights is a good way to start, but also Beholden and all of the rest. I want to thank all three of you. What a great evening this has been. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Pam. And thank you especially, Lidia, for getting the tribe together, even if we can't all hug, which would be the best. And thanks to all of you who attended tonight. You can rewatch this, because I know you're going to want to, on the Broadway Books YouTube channel. I bet you didn't even know we had a YouTube channel. Most of us didn't even know we had a YouTube channel, but it's actually pretty cool. It's youtube.com/bookbroads. And in fact, you'll find a clip there of Lidia reading from the Chronology of Water at Broadway Books many, many years ago, when she stripped down to a bathing suit right as she was reading, which was really amazing. There's also a link to the YouTube channel on the event page for tonight's event on our website. And the best way, of course, to thank these authors and to thank Broadway Books for hosting these authors is, as Pam said so eloquently, and as Cheryl and Lidia also both said, is to buy books through the Broadway Books website, and also to order digital audiobooks from our partners at Libro.fm, which you can reach through our website as well. It still feels like, despite this fabulous evening, that we are in a bit of a dark place in terms of the pandemic, but we're starting to see a glimmer of light to a time when we can actually all gather again together. Until then, stay safe. And as Lidia said so beautifully, we are all part of a larger story. Let's look to the trees for guidance. We appreciate you all so much, very, very much. And good night. Ta-ta.
Bye, everyone.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.